Hello and welcome to the big picture. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's latest trip abroad, ending with his 2-day tour to South Korea, is being viewed and analyzed with great deal of interest. Following his visit to China, his visit to Mongolia and South Korea, both neighbors of China, is interesting as these two countries don't view China as a very friendly neighbor. India's ties with South Korea, though has been steadily growing over the years since it was established in 1973, has not reached the potential according to most of the observers and analysts. It's acknowledged that South Korea, with its economic strength and manufacturing facilities, can be an ideal economic partner to India. In recent years, even the defense and strategic ties between the two countries are being enhanced. Today we will look at the visit of Prime Minister Modi to South Korea and what have been the takeaways from the visit and where the ties are heading. To discuss this, I have with me Sudhir Devare, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Prof. Vyjayanthi Raghavan, Center for Korean Studies at the JNU, Ajay, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry at the Government of India, KP Nayar, Consulting Editor, The Telegraph, and from Seoul in South Korea is my colleague Akhilesh Suman on the phone line, who has been covering the PM's visit. Welcome to all of you. Akhilesh, Akhilesh, the Prime Minister must have finished his visit in South Korea. So in the last 2 days, what is it that you think has been the most significant aspect of it?
Yeah, if I have to summarize the whole thing, Girish, the Prime Minister today, while addressing the CO Forum meeting, it is the first CO Forum meeting between India and South Korea. He says that I am just astonished that a country of the size of Gujarat has developed so much and India has lagged behind. So I think this is the key sentence that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken on a foreign soil, that what India aspires in the whole Asian region. So what is the takeaway, Girish? What I feel that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been saying that till now the Korean things has been a household name. That means he wants to show that yes, Korea has been exporting the consumer goods in India, either be it electronics or cosmetics or whatever. But the question is that whether India can get any benefit from those technological specialities of Korea or not. And that is what Prime Minister is trying to pitch, that now the country has become able to invite the people who can produce in India, who can make in India. That is the Prime Minister's personal mission and national mission. He is trying to make it. So I think this is what he was trying to portray in the whole CO Forum meeting today. And yesterday, even the president, who was the president of South Korea, who was speaking to us while giving the joint statement, she was also telling that India can become a manufacturing hub, and South Korea is wishing to do that. So in that way, you can understand that even when the trade has gone down in the past 2 years, but now Prime Minister is thinking that it can go up in a different way, that South Korean investments should come to India, South Korean companies should come to India to produce in India. Okay. So that is the key word that he's trying to sail on the South Korean soil. Okay, but
Akhilesh, what about the strategic and defense cooperation? You know, they're not talking of a special strategic relationship between India and South Korea. What does it mean?
Yeah. We talked a lot about this from the foreign ministry officials in South Korea, and they are trying to tell that this special strategic relationship with South Korea is almost synonymous with what we have with Japan. So they are telling that economic factors are very much important in this special strategic relationship. That yes, we have similarity of culture, Buddhism, and then we have the same democratic structure in both the countries. But the economic benefits, technological benefits that South Korea does have, it can go into a comprehensive economic partnership agreement in coming year. Okay. And that will become the milestone of the whole India-South Korea relationship. Okay. Because you see that on the next door there is China. We have so many differences with China. But with South Korea, there is hardly any difference what we have seen in near past. So there is no difference on any issue with South Korea. So I think Prime Minister finds it very convenient that South Koreans can make anything that China can make or any other country can make in a different way without any hiccup. And I think this is one of the major tenets of this special strategic relationship.
Okay, stay on, Akhilesh. I'll come back to you. Mr. Devare? How do you look at this relationship? What is so special about this strategic relationship?
Well,
We'll come to the economic aspect of it.
South Korea has developed as a miracle, in fact, and from the time when I used to be ambassador in Korea in the mid-80s, today it is one of the most vibrant economies, and not just in economic
changed
terms.
pretty dramatically
it has
in the last 2
dramatically
decades.
changed. It has dramatically changed over the last 40-50 years. But the change is not only in economic terms. Today, in terms of industry, in terms of R&D, in terms of defense capability, in terms of South Korea's nuclear capability, I think that country has really come a very, very long way. It's a developed country today. It's an OECD country for the last 20 years. And that is one country which has, I think, the potential, which has also shared a great deal with India. A country with which we can develop in terms of our key industries, be it electronics, be it shipbuilding, be it some of the defense industries. See, we have natural limitations with China when it comes to economic cooperation. Japan and South Korea today are two main ingredients of our Act East policy, and that is, I think, Prime Minister is emphasizing. In the Asia Pacific, today we can work very closely with South Korea in advancing our interests, both strategic as well as economic. And from all these points of view, I think this visit has been very useful. I think 2-3 areas which really mark out in my view. One is shipbuilding. Korea is the world leader in that, and we have lagged terribly behind. So we need to have some Korean major shipbuilding coming here. We should lease out, one of our shipbuilding areas, because Koreans are not generally given to joint ventures. They would.
So that's going to be a challenge for us.
So I think that's one. Defense is another, like minesweepers or the offshore petrol vessels or missile technology. These are the areas. And the nuclear area, because the Korean nuclear reactors have seen to be both in terms of price very competitive, also qualitative, like the contract which they won in UAE. And one more strategic aspect, let's not forget, both have a very similar hostile neighborhood. North Korea for South Korea, and for us, our western neighbor. And strangely, both have shared a great deal. North Korea and Pakistan relationship, their closeness goes back for several decades and has been really very deleterious as far as our own security is concerned. So I think...
Okay, KP, Prime Minister goes there, talks about this cooperation and things like that, and then, but there is. You have also been writing about it. Many other observers and analysts feel that the potential which the India-South Korea relationship should have had, it has not been reached so far. Why do you think so?
I can answer that by narrating an incident which happened a few days before Sushma Swaraj went to South Korea in December. There was a track 2 dialogue, and it was not Chatham House rule, so I can share that with you. A colleague of Mr. Devare actually asked an academic who was on the panel of this dialogue, how long will it take for India to be like South Korea? So very frankly, he explained with statistics and diagrams and all that it will, at the present rate, it will take 30 years for India to catch up with South Korea. The good thing about that sort of analysis is that unlike many other countries, the South Koreans, I find, don't sugarcoat things, They tell you, they call a spade, they tell you a fact that's a fact. So I think this is a very reliable, robust relationship. And it's good that the Prime Minister went there, because it has created the foundation for a long-term engagement in real and concrete terms, unlike several other countries, including Japan. And to my mind, the most important meeting that the Prime Minister had yesterday was with someone who has no position in the Korean government. He doesn't even live in Korea. he had a meeting with Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I think it is not an accident that Ban Ki-moon has not visited South Korea for the last 2 years. He came to South Korea, to Seoul, when the Prime Minister is there, and I think he deliberately timed it for this meeting. And speculation is that when his term expires at the end of 2016, he and the next presidential election in South Korea is in 2018, and South Korean presidents are allowed only one term. Speculation is that Ban Ki-moon will be the next president. So I think by having this meeting, the Prime Minister was looking ahead, going beyond 2018, having a robust, personalized, staunch chemistry with the not only this president, the next president. So what we have is a very robust relationship in the process.
Okay. Professor Vyjayanthi?
Yes.
When we talk of look east, act east, how much has South Korea figured in that so far, and how much do you think it will figure in future?
Well, we need to go a long distance for that. I think we've been looking east. Now the Prime Minister is talking about acting east. When he says act east, I hope he means that he is going to implement the various agreements that we have signed. They've only been in the paper so far. Koreans came here with a lot of hope and with a lot of expectations when they did. And they went all out to understand what exactly the Indian market wanted. And one of their strengths was that they understood that we want the maximum, the best features at the lowest price. And that is where I think they were able to achieve all that, and they were able to push the Japanese products out and claim a big share of the market. So having done that, they waited patiently for the POSCO investment to take off. They came with the largest FDI that we've had and the largest investment that they've made anywhere outside, $12 billion investment. And they had thought that once, in a typical Korean style and Confucian way of thinking, they thought once the deal had been signed, that everything would happen the way it does, where the top people, leaders, make a decision and it's carried out without questioning. And for the first time, I think they came head on with the Indian system of functioning, where each person is an authority in himself, each department head is an authority in himself, and where no authority remains unquestioned, can remain unquestioned. So they were very disappointed. They held on very un-Korean like. They waited patiently. Koreans are not known for their patience.
Right.
They are aggressive, and they would have left immediately when it wasn't taking off. But they adapted to the Indian conditions and said, oh, well, this is how it functions in India, so we'll wait out and see. That hasn't happened. They will wait out for some more time to see how far we go ahead with these MOUs. So the ball is in our court as far as it Act East is concerned. And if we take the initiative, they'll go all out to support. They are an exuberant, very spirited people. They want to see things in action, and it, resulting in culminating in the targets that they set out.
Okay.
On
the issue of economic cooperation,
I think,
and the point which Professor made is very interesting. Now that
about POSCO
and there has been a lot of talk of South Korean investments, but it has not really lived up to the potential which it has.
which is very true, but that's, I would say, also true about several other countries. We've had only about $1.5 billion, dollars of investment from Korea last year, which is not terribly high. It's even lower than what comes from the United Kingdom.
Apparently, they have invested, South Korea has invested some $280 or $300 billion in different countries.
That's right.
And we have just a peanut.
Yeah, that's right. We just got about $1.5 billion. But I like to just
say that trade with South Korea has grown since we signed the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement in 2007-8. In fact, the trade deficit, which India had about $1 billion at that point of time, is now over $5 billion. But be it as that may be, we were expecting that much more investment from Korea would take place in India. There would be much more India make, which I think has happened to some extent, but we certainly haven't realized the full potential of it. Partly because of the slowdown, the global slowdown, partly because of reluctance in India to kind of what is legitimately in the hands of the state government. The central government did not want to be overruling that, and I can tell you I was involved with this project monitoring on POSCO. That was the major issue. What is a state government issue, whether it is mining leases, whether it was allotment of land, rehabilitation, etc., there was, I would say, deficit on both the sides, including from the sides of the Koreans, if I might say so. They were not willing to take the advance action which is required, or which was required to win over the confidence of the local people, that if they part with their land, they would be able to at least partake the benefits in terms of employment, etc. That, I must point out, wasn't forthcoming. They first wanted things to be done and then make the investments, which I think to some extent didn't quite work out. But having said that, I think if there is a renewal of interest, which there is, and the areas which have been offered for them, 7 of the 10 agreements which the Prime Minister Modi signed yesterday pertain to the defense sector.
Right.
That is where this strategic partnership, special strategic partnership, because apart from shipbuilding, submarine and other areas, LNG ships to be made, as well as helping Hindustan Shipyard in India to manufacture these. We have also agreed to cooperate with them in terms of future mapping of the world, if one might say future mapping of the East, 2+2 kind of the arrangement which we have with Japan. We've offered them. We've talked of our national security councils, the interaction between them. We've talked of visits, prime ministers meeting each other once a year, either through annual meetings or in the sidelines of other meetings, etc. Right. So we are certainly saying heightened economic cooperation will go along with heightened political and defense cooperation. That's why the strategic partnership. And for us, the Koreans can be extremely helpful, extremely useful in our realizing the Make in India campaign.
Akhilesh, you're there? Akhilesh? Okay, I think we have lost him there. Mr. Devare, coming to the aspect of the cooperation between India and South Korea, in the context of both South Korea and Mongolia being neighbors of China, being suspicious of China, is there a conscious Indian attempt to woo these countries in the same way? Some observers say that India is doing a tit for tat for China. China's relations with the neighbor, with our neighbors, we are also wooing their neighbors.
I don't think we should look at this in such simplistic terms. First of all, China-South Korea relationship is not so terse or difficult.
It's not as adverse as...
No, it is not adverse at all, in fact. There have been recently some issues like Koryo, old empire and so on, but otherwise Korea-China relationship has really blossomed tremendously. Economic relationship, politically, there aren't such major differences, just as there are between Japan and Korea. So in fact, I would say there is no consensus when it comes to Japan and China as far as India and South Korea are concerned. Well, today both India and South Korea have very close relationship with the United States. Of course, Korea is an ally of the United States. But in the overall Asia Pacific, if we are looking for major poles today, as that multipolarity is in fact on the increase, we would say that there is Japan, there is China, there is Korea, there is ASEAN, and now further south, Australia. and India is interacting with all of these countries, developing our closer relations, and therefore one has to look at it from that context and not specifically seeing that our visits to Mongolia or South Korea are seen as kind of a counter to China. No, I wouldn't say that. Perhaps it will be more in the context of some of the major ASEAN countries, but not so much vis-a-vis Korea. But I would say that I think we need to really look at this partnership in a very long-term perspective. Korea has not only emerged as a major industrial country, it is I think a country which has developed very well in terms of education, in terms of human resource development, and for our skills development, Korea is, I think, the right country.
Absolutely.
You know, I would like to very briefly add, education is in all these East Asian countries is always given a very high premium, and in Korea, education is really #1 priority. In fact, for every parent in Korea sending their son, it is still very son-oriented country, to the Seoul National University is the highest thing in the life. And they would sell their land, do everything to educate their children. So I think that is what is the base of that society.
Okay. KP, would you look at it the way Devare is talking about as far as the strategic and political partnership is concerned?
Well, I agree with what Mr. Devare said, but at the same time we should not ignore the fact that there is an illusory feeling in Delhi that we could contain China through this route. You know, the president went to Vietnam, Prime Minister's visit to Mongolia, Korea and all that, but we ignore some sidelights to these. For example, after our president went to Vietnam, the chief of the party, Vietnamese Communist Party, went to China. You know, so all these countries really balance. You know, nobody wants to annoy China. I would also add to what Mr. Devare said. Even this South China Sea, too much is being made of it. You know, we think all these countries are going into a confrontation with China. Absolutely not. And at the ASEAN summit, the East Asia summit in Myanmar last year, we thought that all these countries are going to gang up on China on the South China Sea. And it turned out, if you look at the text of the speeches, it turned out that only two speakers spoke about the South China Sea. One was Philippines, none of the other ASEAN countries did. And unfortunately, the only other speaker who made references to the South China Sea dispute was Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you know. So I think we have this illusion that there is a kind of gang up against China is possible. I mean, it's good to be cautious, you know. I mean, it's good to keep your options open, but we should also be realistic about the fact that the next century is this current millennium. In this current millennium, China is going to be the biggest power in Asia. This is going to be China's Asia, you know.
Okay.
I mean, we could catch up, we could keep up, and we could play a role, but we should not be under the illusion that China's power is going to be diminished in Asia.
Professor Vyjayanthi? No, look, in the context of what is Asia Pacific, the relations between now the growing relation between India, US, Japan, and now South Korea. So, is that going to create some kind of tensions in the India-China relationship?
Yes, it could, because countries do look at bilateral relations and view it vis-a-vis their own country and their own interest. So it could send off signals to countries, but it depends upon how they pick it up. I think for us, the best thing would be not to look towards cooperating with other countries just to counter some other power, but in the context of China, South Korea and India, we can actually carry it forward to a great length for our benefit itself.
Right.
And especially various areas which have been pointed out by Ambassador Devare. Besides that, I think marine engineering, marine technology, the cooperating at the sea lines of communication in the South China Sea, just so that, we ensure that there is security in that area.
Okay.
And
Okay. Mr. Devare, this whole game of balancing the equations, not being seen as pro somebody, you were talking of a multipolar kind of world, but still there is this feeling that still US drives all this, powers in these regions. So how do we stand as a nation in this game of balancing?
Well, we have to be one of the major poles in this configuration, and I think we are behaving like that now. The strength of Indian Navy, I think it is being felt not only in the Indian Ocean but also in the Western Pacific. The kind of message which India has given, very explicit message when President Obama came, we talked about the freedom of navigation,
right,
and adherence to the international law in South China Sea. I think we also spoke about that in oblique manner in the East China Sea or the Sea of Japan with respect to the tension between Japan and China. Again, the same issue, freedom of navigation, because this is something of interest to all of us, including to India. So I think India is now, in a way, in its own manner, asserting itself, and I think that should be, one of the guiding lines as far as India's policies in the future. We don't need to be openly confrontational with anyone, but expand our cooperation and at the same time show that India is also a player in this region.
Akhilesh, is that
Yes.
is that the feeling you get when you're talking with our diplomats and when you're interacting with others in South Korea, that India is playing this balancing game very well?
Actually, diplomats are really very diplomatic in this question, Girish. They are really very diplomatic, and they never tell that we are going to rebalance China with Korea, because I think Prime Minister's mind is working very fast on how he can get investment in his country, and his focus is this. Today in Seoul forum, today Asian Leadership Forum, everywhere he said that Korea's technological achievements should be in benefit of India, and that is what is in his mind. He never mentioned that there is something like South China Sea or something like that. He was talking about prosperity in the whole region. He was talking about the identity of Asia, one Asia, prosperous Asia, things like that.
Okay.
So diplomats, it was. This is the thing. I think that he thinks that Korean technology can come easily to India rather than Chinese or even Japanese technology, because Japanese technology is far costlier than even Korean
Absolutely.
technology.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Akhilesh,
Korean-
we're running out of time. Sorry, we're running out of time. Mr. Dua, very quickly. So, India can use South Korea as an alternative to China as far as manufacturing, as far as trade is concerned?
Let me put it this way, we need both. I don't think it's a question right now, as we were talking in diplomacy. Similarly, in economic issues, we need the investment from China to come. We need to have higher trade with China. At the same time, the subjects in which there is comparative advantage in Korea, we need to be making use of that. And the Koreans definitely have advantage now in shipbuilding. They have advantage in electronics hardware and by and large in consumer industry around the world. And we need to be cooperating with them in every possible manner to take this level of cooperation to a much higher level.
Okay.
And that includes making it easier for Koreans to invest in India, something which happened in the case of POSCO, as we talked about, and that has hurt them to some extent.
And that needs to be
Yes.
corrected. Very quickly, last words to you, KP. Korean tourists have not been coming to India. You think after this there will be some amount of improvement there? Very quickly.
Well, we made huge efforts to get Korean tourists. State government delegations went, successive civil tourism ministers went, but the average number of tourists coming to India from South Korea is 50,000, and 10 million Koreans travel outside everywhere.
There is a big opportunity there for India, obviously, but we'll have to wait and watch. Sorry, we're completely run out of time, but we'll have to wait and watch whether Koreans will start coming in person and then bring their money also in to invest here. We'll hope that the Prime Minister's visit will bring those kind of things into India. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.